Who is the I behind your eyes? At some point in life, each of us has felt it. That silent presence we call the ego. It feels natural, almost invisible in its constancy, like the air we breathe. So familiar, in fact, that we rarely stop to question it. But what really is the ego? And when you ask yourself, who am I? What exactly are you trying to understand? This isn't a riddle with a tidy answer. It's not something you can wrap up in a single quote or a clever thought. It's a journey, one that doesn't take you outward, but inward. A journey that requires you to peer through the layers of your identity, your memories, your emotions, your roles in the world, and ask, what remains when all of that is stripped away? We often think of the ego as this solid, central self, the one who plans, worries, achieves, reacts. It feels like us. But what if it's not? What if it's just a character the mind is playing, a mask we've worn so long that we've forgotten it's a mask? And maybe you're wondering, why question it at all? Why challenge what seems so core to who we are? Because that unquestioned self may not be as stable or as true as we've assumed. And once you begin to ask, to observe, to peel back the layers, something extraordinary can happen. You may start to see that the ego is not a fixed entity at all, but a constantly shifting story, a narrative stitched together by thought, memory, and sensation. Have you ever stopped, really stopped, and just watched the thoughts passing through your mind? One comes, then another, and another. No pause, no gatekeeper, just this relentless stream of noise. And what's most striking is how often those thoughts are about you. What you want, what you fear, what you've done, who you think you are. But who is this you at the center of all that thinking? The mind crafts a character from moments and meanings. It pieces together experiences, emotions, labels, fragments of memory, and from that patchwork, it says, this is who I am. But is it? Or is it just a story? And if it's just a story, then who's listening? But if you truly pause and observe, you may begin to notice something unsettling yet liberating. There is no single central ego pulling the strings from behind the curtain. What you find instead is movement, a continuous flux of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and self-perceptions, constantly reshaping themselves from moment to moment. Each new experience adds a fresh layer to the story we call me, and depending on when you look, that me can feel entirely different. At one moment, you feel confident, the next insecure or anxious. These shifts build the identity we think of as fixed, but in truth, it's not solid at all. It's reactive, fluid, and context-dependent. The ego is an illusion, a mental structure born out of the mind's attempt to make sense of our existence. It's not a villain, but it's not permanent either. It's just a framework, constantly adapting to the needs of the moment to create a sense of self-continuity. But if the ego is only a temporary construct, something that appears and disappears with time, what remains when you stop clinging to the story? Who are you when you're no longer fused with this mental narrative of identity? This is where things begin to shift. When we question the ego's solidity, we make space for a deeper recognition, one that doesn't rely on memories, roles, or emotional states. And in doing so, we start to see that the ego only exists as long as we believe in it. You are not the identity your mind has manufactured. What you truly are lies beyond all the thoughts and emotions that pass through awareness. The ego isn't who you are, it's what you observe. And what observes? That's consciousness. Pure, unchanging consciousness is the backdrop of everything you've ever experienced. It's the silent witness, the spacious awareness in which all thoughts and emotions rise and fall. And unlike the mind or body, it doesn't cling or resist, doesn't chase or judge. It simply is. Consciousness isn't just your mind being aware. It's the field itself, beyond labels, beyond form, beyond thought. It doesn't belong to you. It is you. All day long, we're swept away by thoughts, reacting, judging, remembering, anticipating. But those thoughts aren't who you are. They're temporary. They come and go. What remains is the stillness behind them. That stillness is not just something you have. It's what you've always been. Imagine a moment when you're caught in the grip of a powerful emotion. Anger, sadness, frustration. It's raw. It's real. It feels overwhelming. But now, take a breath. Step back and ask yourself, who was aware of this emotion? The answer isn't the anger. It isn't the sadness. What's aware of the feeling isn't the feeling itself. It's you, not the ego who identifies with the pain, but the silent awareness that notices it, that sees the storm without becoming it. That presence within you, the one that watches without judgment, is not touched by the emotion. You might hear thoughts like, "This shouldn't be happening," or "I can't believe I feel this way." But those are just more clouds passing through the sky of your mind. And you are not the clouds. You are the sky. In those moments of emotional turbulence, try not to resist. Don't analyze, suppress, or cling. Just observe. Watch the thoughts rise. Watch the feeling peak. Let it all happen without needing to interfere. And slowly, you begin to sense the space between you and the experience. The frustration may rage, the sadness may ache, but you, pure awareness, remain untouched. You are the witness, the presence behind the noise. This is the subtle yet profound role of consciousness, to see without attachment, to feel without becoming. We suffer most, not because of the emotions themselves, but because we believe we are those emotions. We say, "I am angry," rather than, "Anger is arising." But true freedom begins when we see that we are not our thoughts, not our emotions. We are the unchanging awareness behind them. Watch your mind closely and you'll notice thoughts appear and disappear all on their own. They don't need your help to exist or to leave. You don't have to grab them or push them away. You can just notice them. Just like the open sky watches the clouds without clinging, you can watch your mental and emotional weather shift without being swept away. This pure awareness, this silent observer, isn't affected by the mind's constant movement. It doesn't get anxious when thoughts race or sad when emotions stir. It simply notices, allowing everything to arise and pass away. While the mind may fluctuate, this presence within you does not. It's steady, unshaken. And when you rest in that awareness, even for a moment, you begin to taste something deeper than peace. You taste freedom, not the kind that comes from escaping life, but the kind that comes from no longer needing to be controlled by it. This realization is not a belief, it's an experience, a felt truth that breaks the illusion of identification. Because the moment you stop being the story and start being the space in which the story unfolds, you're no longer trapped in the mind's narrative. You're finally home, in the stillness of what you truly are. The role of the witness is not just helpful, it's essential to understanding who we really are. The witness does not get entangled in the content of experience. It doesn't take sides, doesn't grasp or resist. It simply recognizes what is happening. It is untouched by joy or sorrow, pleasure or pain, because it is not the thought, not the emotion, not the story. It is the presence behind it all, quietly aware of every moment as it unfolds. No matter how loud the mind becomes or how intense the emotions get, this awareness remains still, unchanged. And that realization is not just philosophical, it's revolutionary, because it allows you to stop confusing yourself with your experiences. When you begin to see yourself as the witness, something shifts. You start to understand that despite the mind's endless fluctuations, your true nature is steady, grounded, and undisturbed. And it all begins with a simple question: who is thinking right now? Who is feeling this emotion? These questions are not meant to negate thoughts or feelings. They are real, they arise, they matter, but they are not you. That's the key. These experiences, no matter how vivid or powerful, do not define the essence of who you are. By asking, who is watching this thought, or who is noticing this sadness, you introduce space into the storm. The mind, which once seemed to be everything, now becomes something that can be seen. And that awareness, that silent presence behind the mind, does not waver. It has always been there. When you ask from that place, you begin to step outside the habitual pull of the ego. You stop reacting automatically to every story your mind spins. You begin to notice a quiet space inside yourself, a space that does not judge, does not claim, does not resist, just awareness, pure and clear. And within that space, something profound becomes possible. You start to realize that your thoughts don't have to control your actions. Your emotions don't have to dictate your reactions. You are no longer a puppet to every internal impulse. You are an aware participant, conscious, centered, free to respond instead of reflexively react. In that awareness, true clarity arises. You don't lose your humanity, you reclaim it with wisdom and presence. To bring this into sharper focus, let's look at a real-life example. Imagine you're facing a situation that triggers anxiety. Your mind kicks into overdrive, generating an endless loop of thoughts. What if this goes wrong? What if I fail? What will happen to me? The spiral begins, and with it, your body tightens, your breath shortens, and the anxiety grows louder. Normally, we get pulled into this stream and go wherever it takes us. But what if, instead, you paused, just for a moment, and asked, who is noticing these anxious thoughts? Who is actually feeling this anxiety right now? That pause, however small, opens a doorway. By questioning the identity of the one observing, you create space between yourself and the mental noise. You begin to see that you are not the anxiety itself, nor are you the frantic thoughts swirling in your head. At your core, you are the quiet, steady awareness that observes it all. And in that recognition, the anxiety starts to lose its grip. It no longer defines you. It still moves through you, but now it's simply passing through the field of awareness, not the foundation of who you are. This process of gentle self-inquiry has a cumulative power. Each time you practice it, you strengthen your ability to not immediately fuse with the mind's content. Slowly, you begin to realize that you are the silent space in which thoughts appear, not the thoughts themselves. You are the witness, still, grounded, undisturbed by the fluctuations of your inner world. In this way, the question, who is observing this, becomes not just a philosophical idea, but a practical, transformative tool. It's not about escaping experience, but about seeing it clearly. The more often you ask, the more you experience a truth that's not intellectual, but embodied. That what you truly are is not your mental narrative, but the conscious presence beneath it. And from this grounded state, life feels different, more peaceful, more centered, more real. As we begin to examine our own experience more closely, we start to recognize that the ego the mind builds is like a mask we wear to function in the world. It's not a fixed identity, but a flexible story, shaped by our inner impressions and external conditions. The ego shifts depending on the moment, adapting to the stage it's performing on. One day you're the achiever, another day the victim, then the leader, then the failure. And it feels real until you look closer. What we call me is often just a composite of stories, beliefs, and emotions inherited from past experiences. The ego isn't constant, It recreates itself continuously in response to whatever environment it's in. It's a shapeshifter, weaving together a version of us based on what we believe we are, the roles we play, and the narratives we've internalized. It tries to maintain control, crafting identities that seem solid, but are actually woven from perception and habit. These shifting identities rise and fall like waves, driven by the stories we tell and the meanings we attach to events. But when we begin to question this identification, the illusion of solidity begins to crack. We start to see the ego for what it really is, a temporary mental framework, entirely dependent on the ever-changing external world. It hides behind personal stories and self-imposed limitations, creating the illusion of permanence. Yet, under honest observation, its fragility is revealed, and it's here, in this awareness, that something greater emerges. Because when we anchor ourselves not in the ego's story, but in the consciousness that observes the story, we experience a deeper truth. We are not the champion or the failure. We are not the personality shaped by approval or rejection. We are the space in which these roles appear and dissolve. We are the still witness that never changes, no matter how many identities rise and fall. The dissolving of the ego is not a single moment, it's an ongoing unfolding. But as we begin to step away from our temporary identities and rest in pure awareness, a deep sense of freedom begins to arise. The ego gradually loses its grip, and what remains is a life lived with more authenticity. Beyond the reflexive constraints of a fixed self, what's left is stillness, consciousness itself, unchanging, watching all things come and go, yet never moved by them. And when we realize that the ego we've identified with is merely an illusion, something extraordinary happens. A profound release begins to bloom. The layers of identity, the stories and roles we've clung to, start to fade, making space for the deeper truth of who we really are. We come to understand that we are not the roles we've played, nor the emotions that rise and fall, but the unchanging presence that quietly sees it all. And that presence, this conscious witnessing, is the essence of what we are. This shift in perspective can radically transform the way we live. When we identify with the ego, life becomes a series of reactions, struggling for control, defending our image, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain. Every moment is filtered through the lens of fear or ambition, scarcity or validation. But when we begin to see through the illusion, when we connect with the awareness that simply observes, our relationship to life softens. There is more space, more ease, more trust in simply being. Pure awareness is not entangled in identity, pain, or control. It watches, it allows, and when we rest in that awareness, we realize suffering is not inherent to who we are. It arises when we identify with the ego's fearful grasp and emotional reactivity. But suffering, like thought and feeling, is transient. It passes, and we remain unshaken, ever present, free. True freedom begins when we stop needing to control or define our experience. It emerges from the simple act of being here, open, observant, not fused with the mind's ever-changing narrative. This freedom isn't a peak achievement. It's a gentle unfolding, deepening every time we return to presence. With each breath, each moment of clear observation, we shift from unconscious reaction to conscious living. Life becomes less about clinging and more about seeing, less about becoming and more about being. And in this way, every moment becomes a doorway to wholeness. The stories of the past no longer trap us. The projections of the future no longer bind us. We return to what is real, a living presence rooted in the now. So the invitation is simple. Come back to awareness, not to escape life, but to meet it with clarity, to observe, not judge, not cling, not run, just witness. And in this witnessing, you'll find a quiet liberation that no situation can shake. You'll no longer be held hostage by the mind's fluctuations. You'll walk in the world, not as a persona, but as presence itself, still, aware, and free. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to support the channel by liking and subscribing. Feel free to share this video with anyone who may be ready to hear it. And leave a comment below with your reflections, experiences, or questions. I truly appreciate your presence here. And until next time, stay grounded, stay aware, and I'll see you again soon.